The alien child was dying and no one would help. Captain Derek Hayes stood in the observation bay of the Coalition Medical Station, watching through reinforced glass as the small veteran girl convulsed on the quarantine bed. Her translucent skin flickered between violet and gray, each pulse weaker than the last. Around him, representatives from a dozen species observed with clinical detachment, their various appendages folded, their eyes dim with resignation. "The syndrome is fatal," Ambassador Kelthar stated, his crystalline voice devoid of emotion. "There is no cure. Proximity increases infection risk by 3,000%. Protocol dictates isolation until expiration." Derek's jaw tightened. The girl couldn't have been more than 6 in human years. Her forearms clutched at nothing, seeking comfort that would never come. "Someone should be with her," Derek said. The veteran delegate, a tall being whose name Derek couldn't pronounce, turned 3 of its eyes toward him. "You misunderstand biology, human. The crimson fade shows no mercy. To enter is to die within hours. We honor her sacrifice by preserving ourselves. That's a child in there, a child already lost." Derek looked at the monitoring screens. Heart rate spiking, breathing irregular. The medical AI projected 12 minutes until system failure, 12 minutes of dying alone while 20 representatives watched from safety. He moved toward the airlock. "Captain Hayes, stop!" The station commander, a Drexian named Vorlin, blocked his path with one massive arm. "Your species may be reckless, but I will not permit suicide. Get out of my way. The disease adapts to each species differently. Humans have no immunity, no resistance. You will die screaming." Derek met the commander's cluster of eyes without flinching. "Then I'll die holding her hand. This is madness. This is called being human." He pushed past Vorlin and entered the airlock code. Alarms shrieked. The assembled aliens erupted in protest, their translators creating a cacophony of objection. Derek ignored them all. The inner door hissed open, and he stepped into the quarantine chamber. The smell hit him first, sharp and metallic, like copper mixed with ozone. The girl's breathing rattled in her small chest. Her eyes, large and golden, found his face. Terror and confusion swirled in their depths. Derek pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. He took one of her small hands in his, feeling the fever burning through her skin. "Hey there," he said softly. "You're not alone anymore." Outside the glass, the observation bay had gone completely silent. Every species, every delegate, every hardened commander stood frozen, watching the human who had chosen death over letting a child die afraid. The girl's breathing steadied slightly. Her fingers curled around Derek's thumb, and the countdown continued. Derek felt the fever spreading through his own body within minutes. His hands began to shake. Sweat broke across his forehead. The medical displays on the wall tracked 2 patients now, both critical, both declining. But the girl had stopped convulsing. Her golden eyes stayed locked on his face, wide and afraid, but no longer alone. Derek squeezed her hand gently and tried to smile despite the fire building in his veins. "My name's Derek," he said, keeping his voice steady. "What's yours?" The translator embedded in the ceiling flickered to life. "Lyra," came the small, trembling response. "That's a beautiful name, Lyra. I had a daughter once. She likes stars." He glanced toward the viewport where a nebula glowed purple and gold. "You see that one out there? The bright one? That's called the Phoenix Nebula. Know why?" Lyra's head moved, slightly. A shake, he thought. Because phoenixes rise from ashes, they come back stronger. His vision blurred for a moment. He blinked hard, just like you're going to do. Outside the glass, the observation bay had transformed into chaos. Ambassador Keltar was gesturing frantically at a holographic display. Vorlin stood motionless, all 6 of his arms hanging limp at his sides. The veteran delegate had collapsed into a chair, its natural bioluminescence dimmed to almost nothing. A new voice cut through the station's communication system. "This is Dr. Lynn Porter from the human medical vessel Endeavor. We received the distress beacon. What the hell is happening over there?" Vorlin's translator kicked in. "A human officer has entered quarantine with the infected Vethran child. He is compromised. The Crimson Fade will claim them both within the hour." There was a long pause. Then, "Keep them alive. We're coming in hot." Derek barely registered the conversation. The pain had intensified, spreading from his chest into his limbs. His medical readouts showed cellular breakdown beginning. The disease was adapting to human physiology exactly as predicted, rewriting his cells, turning his own body against him. Lyra made a soft sound, drawing his attention back. She was looking at the monitor showing his declining vitals. "Don't worry about me, kiddo," Derek managed. "I'm tougher than I look." But he wasn't. Nobody was tough enough for this. The little girl's second hand reached out and wrapped around his wrist. All four of her arms were holding him now, anchoring herself to him like he was the last solid thing in a dissolving world. Through the glass, he saw the Vethran delegate stand abruptly. It moved to the observation window and pressed one elongated hand against the barrier. Its skin shifted through colors Derek had no names for, cycling faster and faster. "What is it saying?" someone asked. Ambassador Kelfar consulted his translator. His crystalline body dimmed. "It says, 'I am her father. I should be the one in there, but I am too afraid to die.'" The observation bay went silent again. Derek's heart rate spiked on the monitor. His breathing became labored. The disease was moving faster now, attacking his nervous system. He had maybe 10 minutes left. Lyra had less. But neither of them was alone. "Tell me about your home, Lyra," Derek whispered, fighting to keep his eyes open. "What's it like?" Her voice came weak through the translator. "Water. Lots of water. And singing stones that glow when the moons rise. That sounds perfect. Will I see it again?" Derek wanted to lie. Every instinct screamed to comfort her with false hope. But he'd never lied to his own daughter. And he wouldn't start now. "I don't know," he said honestly. "But I promise you won't face whatever comes next by yourself." Her grip tightened on his wrist. Outside, proximity alarms blared as the Endeavor arrived, moving at speeds that should have torn the ship apart. It locked onto the station with a magnetic clamp that shook the entire structure. Dr. Porter's voice came through again, sharp and urgent. "We need a sample of the disease, now. And tell that stubborn captain to hang on. Humans don't quit that easy." Derek smiled despite everything. "Damn right we don't." His vision went dark at the edges. The last thing he saw before consciousness slipped was Lyra's face, still afraid but no longer abandoned. And outside the glass, every species in the coalition watched and wondered what kind of creature would choose certain death over letting a child die alone. They were about to find out what humans could do when someone they cared about was in danger. Dr. Porter burst through the station airlock with a team of 6 medics, each carrying equipment the coalition had never seen. She was a compact woman, with gray streaks in her dark hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind her, the Endeavor's medical bay had been converted into a rolling laboratory, every surface covered with samples, scanners, and experimental treatments. "Get me a direct feed of both patients' vitals," she barked at Vorlin, "and someone explain why nobody tried synthetic antibody matching or viral interference protocols." Ambassador Kelthar's crystalline form pulsed with indignation. "Those methods are theoretical at best. The Crimson Fade has no known counter." "Had no known counter," Porter corrected, her fingers flying across a holographic interface. "Your species gave up." "Humans don't do that." She pulled up Derek's cellular breakdown on the main display. The disease had spread through 60% of his system, rewriting his DNA strand by strand. Lyra's readings were even worse, her natural biology providing less resistance than Derek's human physiology. "They're both past the point of conventional intervention," the veteran father said, his voice hollow through the translator. "My daughter is lost. Your captain is lost." This gesture, while noble, changes nothing. Porter spun to face him. "Your daughter is 6 years old and fighting for every breath. My captain is in there holding her hand while his organs shut down. Noble doesn't cover it." She turned back to her team. "Mitchell, run a comparative analysis on the disease structure. Chen, I need you on protein synthesis. We're building a counteragent from scratch." "Doctor, there's no time," one of her medics protested. "Even if we identify a weakness, manufacturing and testing would take days. Then we work faster." Inside the quarantine chamber, Derek's body had begun to fail in earnest. His spine arched as neural pathways misfired. Blood vessels burst beneath his skin, creating dark patterns across his arms. The monitors showed cardiac irregularities that should have killed him already. But he kept breathing, kept holding Lyra's hand. The little girl had stopped moving entirely, her golden eyes half closed, her chest barely rising. The medical AI gave her 3 minutes. Porter's hands trembled as she worked, pulling data from every source available. The crimson fade was elegant in its brutality, a virus that learned and adapted with each host, making every infection unique. No wonder the Coalition had declared it incurable. It was like fighting an enemy that rewrote the rules with every battle. But humans had fought enemies like that before. "I've got something," Mitchell called out. "The virus uses a specific protein marker to identify host cells. If we can flood the system with false markers, we might confuse it long enough to buy time." "Time for what?" Kelthar asked. "You cannot cure them." Porter ignored him. "Chen, can we synthesize the false markers using human and veteran genetic templates?" "Already on it." "But doctor, even if this works, we're talking about slowing the disease, not stopping it, one step at a time." Porter activated the medical bay's fabrication units. Nanoscale assemblers began constructing molecules at speeds that pushed the machinery to its limits. "Vorlin, I need that airlock opened in 2 minutes. You'll contaminate the entire station. We're using a negative pressure field and UV sterilization. The risk is minimal." "Minimal is not zero." Porter met his clustered eyes without flinching. Captain Hayes didn't calculate odds when he walked in there. "Neither am I." The fabrication units chimed. She grabbed 2 syringes filled with a golden liquid that seemed to glow from within. The false protein markers, suspended in a solution designed to spread through the bloodstream faster than anything nature had ever produced. "This is insane," Quelthar said. "Welcome to human medicine." Porter moved to the airlock controls. "Vorlin, I'm going in. If I don't come back out, tell my crew they did good work." The commander's translator was silent for a long moment. "Then you are all insane." "Yeah, we get that a lot." Porter cycled through the airlock, the UV barriers scorching her medical suit as she passed. Inside the quarantine chamber, the smell of decay and fever was overwhelming. Derek was unconscious now, his vitals barely registering. Lyra had stopped breathing. Porter moved with the speed of someone who had worked emergency trauma for 30 years. She injected Derek first, then Lyra, pushing the false markers directly into their major arteries. The golden liquid dispersed through their systems like light through dark water. Nothing happened. Porter watched the monitors, her heart hammering against her ribs. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Derek's cardiac rhythm stuttered, then strengthened. Lyra's chest hitched once, twice, then drew in a full breath. Outside the glass, every being in the observation bay pressed forward. The disease was retreating, confused by millions of false targets, its adaptive mechanisms overwhelmed by data it couldn't process. It wasn't a cure. It was a stay of execution, but it was enough. Porter activated her communicator. "Mitchell, prep the intensive care units. We're bringing them out." Derek's eyes fluttered open. He saw Porter standing over him and managed a weak smile. "Took you long enough, Doc." "Shut up and save your strength, Captain. We're not done yet." The next 72 hours blurred into a continuous cycle of treatment, monitoring, and desperate innovation. The Endeavor's medical bay became a fortress of human determination, with Porter and her team pushing their bodies past exhaustion. Derek and Lyra lay in adjacent isolation pods, their bodies fighting wars on a cellular level while machines hummed and beeped around them. The false protein markers had bought time, but the Crimson Fade was learning. It began adapting to the deception, finding new pathways through compromised tissue. Porter watched the disease evolve in real time on her displays, a microscopic arms race between human ingenuity and viral ruthlessness. "We need a permanent solution," Chen said, her eyes bloodshot from 3 days without sleep. "The markers are losing effectiveness. Another 12 hours and we're back where we started." Porter studied the genetic sequences scrolling across her screen. The virus was elegant, almost beautiful in its complexity. It rewrote itself constantly, learning from every defense the body mounted against it. Traditional medicine would never catch something that moved this fast. But traditional medicine wasn't what humans did best. "What if we stopped trying to kill it?" Porter said suddenly. Mitchell looked up from his terminal. "Come again?" "Every treatment we've tried attacks the virus directly. It adapts and overcomes. But what if we don't fight the virus? What if we teach the body to coexist with it?" "That's impossible. The Crimson Fade destroys cellular function. There's no coexistence." Porter pulled up Derek's latest scans. Despite everything, his immune system was still mounting a response, still trying to adapt even as the disease tore through him. And buried in the data, she saw something that made her heart race. Look at sequence marker 4471. Derek's T cells are producing an antibody we've never seen before. It's not killing the virus, but it's limiting its spread to non-essential tissue. Chen leaned in, her fatigue forgotten. His body is quarantining the infection internally, creating safe zones. Exactly. If we can isolate that antibody and enhance it, we might be able to turn the patients into stable carriers. The disease stays alive but contained, unable to spread or cause further damage. Ambassador Kel Thar, who had remained in the observation area for 3 straight days, moved closer to the glass. "You propose to leave them infected? This is your solution?" "This is survival," Porter shot back. "Perfect isn't an option. Alive is." She began working immediately, extracting samples from Derek's immune system and running them through accelerated mutation sequences. The Endeavor's computers modeled thousands of variations, searching for the one that would strengthen the body's natural compartmentalization response. Outside the medical bay, the coalition representatives had grown from 20 to nearly 200. Word had spread through the station and beyond about the human captain who chose death over abandoning a child, and the human doctor fighting impossible odds to save them both. Species that had never shown interest in each other's welfare now gathered in silence, watching humanity do what humanity did best: refuse to accept defeat. Inside his isolation pod, Derek's consciousness drifted in and out of fever dreams. He saw his daughter's face, her smile when he'd taught her to identify constellations. He saw Lyra's golden eyes, terrified and alone until he'd sat down beside her. He felt the weight of her small hands holding his, anchoring them both against the dark. In the adjacent pod, Lyra's vital signs had stabilized but remained critical. Her father stood vigil outside the glass, his bioluminescent skin cycling through colors that the translator identified as grief, hope, fear, and something that had no human equivalent. Porter's hands moved across the controls with practiced precision. She'd lost patients before. Too many. She'd held their hands as they died, memorized their faces. carried their weight. But she'd never stopped fighting. Never stopped believing that the next impossible case might have a solution buried somewhere in the data. The computer chimed. A viable antibody enhancement, synthesized and ready for human trials. "That's it?" Mitchell asked, staring at the molecular structure. "That's our shot." Porter loaded the enhancement into 2 injection units. "It either works or we're out of options." She moved back into the quarantine chamber, the UV barriers feeling less intense now that she'd passed through them a dozen times. Derek's pod hissed open first. She administered the injection directly into his central line, watching the enhancement spread through his circulatory system. His body convulsed once, hard enough to trigger every alarm on the monitors. Then stillness. The viral load began dropping, not disappearing, but retreating into isolated pockets throughout his tissue. His immune system was learning, building walls around the infection, creating permanent quarantine zones at a cellular level. Porter moved to Lyra's pod. The little girl's eyes opened as the injection entered her system. She looked directly at Porter, and something in that gaze reminded the doctor why she'd chosen this profession 40 years ago. Because someone had to stand between death and the ones who deserved to live. Lyra's body responded differently than Derek's, her veteran physiology creating patterns the computer hadn't predicted. For 30 seconds, Porter thought she'd made a fatal mistake. Then the pattern stabilized, the viral load compartmentalized, the crisis contained. Both patients were breathing on their own. Both were stable. Both were alive. Porter's legs gave out, and she sat down hard on the chamber floor, her entire body shaking with exhaustion and relief. Outside the glass, the observation bay erupted, not with the clinical detachment of scientists observing data, but with something rawer, something that crossed species barriers. Vorlin's translator caught it first. "Hope," the Drexian commander said quietly. "They are feeling hope." Ambassador Kelthar's crystalline form pulsed with light. "The human doctor has done what our entire coalition declared impossible." "No," Vorlin corrected. "The humans did what we refused to try. Recovery was slow and painful, but it was recovery nonetheless." Derek woke fully on the 5th day, his body weak but functioning. The isolation pod had been replaced with a standard medical bed. The quarantine protocols lifted once Porter confirmed the viral containment was holding. He could feel the disease still inside him, a strange presence lurking in the corners of his cells, but it was caged now. Dormant, Lyra woke an hour after Derek. Her father was allowed into the room for the first time since the infection began, and the reunion made every human medic stop their work to watch. The veteran moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large, gathering his daughter into all 6 of his arms while his skin flashed through every color of relief and joy. Porter stood in the doorway, clipboard in hand, refusing to let sentiment interfere with her assessment. "She'll need monitoring for at least 6 months, she told the father through the translator. "The antibody enhancement is stable, but we're in uncharted territory. Any sign of fever, any cellular irregularity, and she comes straight back here." The veteran father turned 3 eyes toward her. His skin shifted to a deep blue that the translator identified as profound gratitude. "You have given me back my daughter's life. There are no words in any language sufficient to express what this means. Thank Captain Hayes. He's the one who bought us the time we needed. I intend to." The father's skin shifted again, this time to something the translator struggled with before settling on: eternal debt mixed with shame. Porter nodded and moved to Derek's bedside. The captain was sitting up now, color returning to his face despite the exhaustion etched into every feature. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Like I got run over by a cargo hauler. Twice." Derek managed a weak grin. "But I'll live, right?" "You live. The virus is contained, your immune system has adapted, and your organ function is returning to normal. You'll be cleared for light duty in 2 weeks, full duty in 6. And Lyra? Porter glanced at the little girl, who was describing something to her father in rapid bursts of her native language, her forearms gesturing wildly. She's young. Her body adapted better than we hoped. She'll carry the virus for life. Same as you, but it won't stop her from being a normal kid. Derek's expression softened. Good. That's good. You do realize you nearly died, right? For a child you'd never met, from a species you'd barely encountered. Yeah, I realize. Want to explain why? Derek was quiet for a moment, his eyes distant. My daughter was 8 when the transport accident happened. I was off-world, commanding a survey mission. By the time I got the message, she'd been gone for 6 hours. He swallowed hard. She died alone, Doc, scared and calling for me. And I wasn't there. I'll carry that for the rest of my life. Porter's grip tightened on her clipboard. So when I saw Lyra in that room, dying alone while people watched through glass, Derek shook his head. I couldn't do it again. I couldn't let another kid face that alone. Not when I could do something about it, even if it meant dying yourself, especially then. Porter sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly feeling every one of her 60 years. You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most reckless. Can't it be both? She laughed despite herself. Yeah, it can be both. The door chimed and Vorlin entered, his massive frame filling the doorway. The Drexian commander approached Derek's bed with unusual hesitation, his cluster of eyes focused intently on the human captain. I came to apologize, Vorlin said through his translator. Derek blinked. For what? For trying to stop you, for calling your choice madness, for not understanding what you were doing until it was nearly too late. The commander's skin rippled with what might have been discomfort. In my 300 years of service, I have witnessed countless acts of courage. Strategic bravery, tactical brilliance, noble sacrifice in the face of overwhelming odds, but I have never seen someone choose certain death simply to provide comfort to a dying child. I'm not special, Commander. Any decent person would have done the same. No, Captain, they would not. We did not. Vorlin gestured toward the observation bay, where Coalition representatives still gathered in unprecedented numbers. 47 species watched that child die alone because we calculated the risk and chose preservation over compassion. You calculated nothing. You simply acted. Derek shifted uncomfortably. I just did what felt right. And that, Vorlin continued, is why the Coalition Council has requested a formal meeting with human leadership. They wish to understand your species better, to learn how you produce individuals who make such choices. We're not all like that. Perhaps not, but enough of you are that it makes a difference. The commander placed one massive hand on Derek's shoulder. The galaxy has watched humanity for decades, wondering what kind of species you truly are. Today, you gave them an answer. Before Derek could respond, Ambassador Kelfar entered the room, his crystalline body resonating with purpose. Behind him came representatives from a dozen other species, each carrying objects or displaying symbols Derek didn't recognize. Captain Hayes, Quelfar began, his voice taking on a formal resonance. On behalf of the Coalition Medical Council, I present you with the Healer's Mark, an honor given only to those who demonstrate extraordinary sacrifice in the preservation of life. A small device was placed in Derek's hand. It pulsed with soft light, warm against his palm. Additionally, Kelthar continued, the Vethran homeworld has declared you an honorary member of their species, with all rights and privileges therein. They have requested that you visit their world when you are recovered, so that Lyra's entire community may thank you properly. Derek stared at the growing pile of honors and gifts, overwhelmed. This is too much. I didn't do this for recognition. We know, Kelthar said simply. That is precisely why you deserve it. 6 weeks later, Derek stood on the bridge of the Endeavor as it approached the Vethran homeworld. Through the viewport, 3 moons hung above a planet that seemed to be made entirely of water and light. Floating cities dotted the surface, connected by bridges that glowed with bioluminescent energy. Even from orbit he could hear it, a low harmonic resonance that the ship's sensors identified as the singing stones Lyra had described. "It's beautiful," Porter said from beside him. She'd insisted on accompanying Derek, citing medical oversight as her excuse, though everyone knew she simply wanted to see Lyra again. The planet's orbital control granted them immediate clearance, and within an hour they were descending toward the largest floating city. Crowds had gathered at the landing platform, thousands of Vethran citizens displaying colors Derek had never seen before. The translator worked overtime trying to identify the emotional spectrum, finally settling on variations of gratitude, curiosity, and celebration. Lyra waited at the front of the crowd, her father beside her. She'd grown in the 6 weeks since Derek had last seen her, her skin brighter, her movement stronger. The moment the Endeavor's ramp descended, she broke free from her father's grasp and ran toward Derek with all 4 arms outstretched. He caught her in a hug that felt like coming home. "You came," she said through the translator, her voice filled with joy. "Father said you would, but I was afraid you'd be too busy saving other people." Derek laughed. "I'll always make time for you, kiddo." Lyra's father approached, his skin cycling through formal greeting colors. "Captain Hayes, Dr. Porter, welcome to Veth Prime. Our world is honored by your presence." What followed was 3 days of celebration unlike anything Derek had experienced. The Vethran people treated him not as a hero, but as family, inviting him into their homes, teaching him their customs, sharing their lives with an openness that surprised him. They wanted to understand the human who had chosen death over letting one of their children face it alone. On the second night, Lyra took Derek to see the singing stones. They stood at the edge of the floating city as the 3 moons rose and the massive crystalline formations that dotted the ocean began to resonate. The sound was beyond description, a harmony that seemed to vibrate through Derek's entire body, touching something deep and primal. "This is what I wanted to see again," Lyra said quietly, her small hand in his. "When I was dying, I thought I'd never hear them sing. But you did. You made it because you stayed with me." She looked up at him with those golden eyes. "Why did you do it, Derek? Everyone says humans value self-preservation. Why did you choose differently?" Derek knelt down to her level. "Because some things are more important than being safe, like making sure a scared kid knows she's not alone, like showing people that compassion matters more than caution." "Were you scared? Terrified? But you did it anyway. That's what courage is, Lyra. Being scared and doing the right thing regardless." She hugged him again, and they stood together listening to the stones sing their ancient songs. The next morning brought a formal ceremony in the city's central plaza. Derek stood before the assembled Vethran Council, uncomfortable in the formal attire they'd provided. Beside him, Porter looked equally out of place, but maintained her professional composure. The eldest council member, a Vethran whose skin had faded to pale silver with age, raised her 6 arms in ceremonial greeting. "Captain Derek Hayes," she began, her voice carrying across the plaza through amplification crystals, "you have done what we believed impossible. Not the medical achievement, though that too deserves recognition. You demonstrated that compassion can exist without calculation, that sacrifice can be offered without expectation of reward, and that in the darkest moment, someone can choose connection over survival." The crowd's skin rippled with agreement, creating waves of color that spread through thousands of gathered citizens. The Vethran people have existed for 40,000 years. We have built civilizations, explored the stars, and joined the coalition of species that governs this region of space. But we have never encountered a species quite like humanity. You confuse us, you frighten us, and you inspire us." Derek felt the weight of every eye in the plaza. We believed the Crimson Fade was a death sentence because we accepted what our science told us. We watched our children die alone because we calculated the risk and chose preservation. But you showed us that some equations have variables we've been ignoring, variables like hope, like determination, like the simple refusal to let fear make our choices. The council member descended from the platform and approached Derek directly. She placed something in his hands, a small crystal that pulsed with internal light. "This is a fragment of the first singing stone our people ever discovered. It has been held by our greatest leaders, our bravest explorers, and our most compassionate healers. Today, we give it to you, not as payment for what you've done, but as recognition of what you represent." Derek's throat tightened. "I don't know what to say. Say you'll remember us. Say that when humanity looks to the stars and wonders if connection with other species is possible, you'll tell them about the Vethran people who learned courage from a human captain. I promise." The plaza erupted in harmonic sound, thousands of Vethran voices creating a song that rivaled the stones themselves. Derek felt tears on his face and didn't bother wiping them away. Later that evening, as the Endeavor prepared for departure, Lyra came to say goodbye. She'd grown even more in just the past 3 days, her body responding to treatment with the resilience of youth. "Will I see you again?" she asked. "Definitely. I'll come back and visit. And when you're older, if you want to see human space, you're always welcome." "I'd like that." She handed him a small data crystal. "I made this for you. It's recordings of the singing stones from every season, so you can remember us even when you're far away." Derek took the crystal carefully. "Thank you, Lyra, for everything." "No, Derek. Thank you for sitting beside me when everyone else watched from afar." The Endeavor's journey back to human space took 2 weeks, and Derek spent most of it in quiet reflection. The singing stone sat on his desk, pulsing with gentle light, a constant reminder of what had happened. Word of his actions had spread through coalition networks faster than any official report could travel. By the time they reached Earth orbit, Derek's name was already legend. He hadn't wanted that. The debriefing at Human Command lasted 6 hours. Admirals and council members questioned every decision, analyzed every risk, and ultimately concluded that Derek had violated at least 14 protocols by entering that quarantine chamber. They also concluded that his actions had fundamentally shifted how the galaxy viewed humanity. "You've made us look reckless," Admiral Kent said, his expression unreadable. "With respect, sir, I made us look human." Kent's stern facade cracked into something resembling a smile. "Yes, Captain, you did." The formal reprimand went into Derek's file alongside a commendation for extraordinary service. Politics, Derek thought. Always politics. But the real impact came in the weeks that followed. The Coalition Medical Council requested access to Porter's research, and her techniques for fighting the Crimson Fade were adapted for 17 other species. 3 children were saved in the first month alone, each one pulled back from death by methods that hadn't existed before. A human doctor refused to accept the impossible. Vorlin visited Earth to personally deliver an invitation. The Coalition wanted to establish a joint medical research facility, with humans and Coalition species working together to tackle diseases that had been declared incurable. Porter accepted the directorship before he'd finished explaining the offer. "You know this means working with species who watched Lyra die without helping," Derek pointed out when she told him. "Yeah, but it also means teaching them to do better." Porter's eyes gleamed with determination. "Besides, they're asking to learn from us. That's a start." The Vethran father, whose name Derek finally learned was Calvara, sent a message that arrived on a quantum relay. It contained images of Lyra playing with other children. her skin bright with health and happiness. The message was simple. She laughs now. She dreams of becoming a doctor like the human who saved her. Thank you for giving her the chance to choose her future. Derek kept that message, reading it whenever the nightmares came, the ones where he was too late, where he watched his daughter die, alone all over again. Lyra's laughter helped quiet those dark places, reminding him that while he couldn't change the past, he'd made damn sure history didn't repeat itself. 6 months after the incident, Derek received an unexpected visitor. Ambassador Thar materialized on the Endeavor's bridge via holographic relay, his crystalline form resonating with purpose. Captain Hayes, the Coalition Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's petition for full membership. Derek's heart raced. Humanity had been seeking full coalition status for 20 years, always denied because other species found humans too unpredictable, too aggressive, too different. The Council has voted to grant humanity full membership status, with all rights and responsibilities therein. We believe a species capable of your compassion and Dr. Porter's innovation deserves a voice in galactic affairs. Derek felt the weight of that statement. Because I sat with a dying child? Because you showed us that our calculations were incomplete, that there are factors beyond risk assessment and resource allocation. You reminded us why civilizations exist in the first place, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, to comfort those who face darkness, and to choose connection over isolation, even when it costs us everything. Thar's form pulsed brighter. 47 species watched Lyra die alone and called it logical. One human sat beside her and called it necessary. The galaxy needed that reminder, Captain. We all did. The transmission ended, leaving Derek alone with his thoughts. That night, he stood in his quarters holding the singing stone and the data crystal Lyra had given him. He activated the recording, and the harmonics of the Vetheran stones filled the small space with their ancient song. Beautiful and haunting, a reminder of what he'd nearly lost and what he'd managed to save. His communicator chimed, a message from Lyra, sent across the vast distance between worlds. Derek, I started school today. I told everyone about the human who wasn't afraid to be kind. My teacher says kindness is the bravest thing anyone can choose. I think she's right. I think you're the bravest person I know. Come visit soon. The stones miss you almost as much as I do. Derek smiled, feeling something tight in his chest finally loosened. He'd carried the weight of his daughter's death for years, letting it define him, shape him, drive him. But maybe that weight could be transformed into something else. Not forgotten, never forgotten, but balanced by the knowledge that he'd given another father the chance to hold his daughter again. He looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness punctuated by points of light. Somewhere out there, Lyra was growing up healthy and strong. Somewhere out there, 3 other children were alive because Porter had refused to accept defeat. Somewhere out there, 47 species were reconsidering what courage actually meant. And somewhere deep in his soul, Derek felt his daughter's presence, not as grief, but as quiet approval. He'd honored her memory not by letting fear control him, but by ensuring no other child faced death alone when he had the power to prevent it. The singing stone pulsed in his hand, its light steady and warm. Derek Hayes had gone into that quarantine chamber expecting to die. Instead, he'd reminded the galaxy what it meant to be alive, to choose compassion over caution, to sit beside the afraid and the alone, and simply say, "You're not facing this by yourself." That was humanity's gift to the stars.